Hi, this is Matt Donegan at Challenger Stories. I'm here with Nicholas. Nicholas is the founder of Axela, which is a technology driven company in the health and care space. So, Nicholas, before we get into your background, which is fascinating, by the way, tell me how you can use technology in the health and care space.
Well, I think the health and care space is quite dated, and technology is still relatively a new space, new for this space. So I think there's a lot of things we can do, and especially the fact that we are so far behind or have been behind everybody else. We can leverage technology for automation. We can leverage it to analyze big bits of data. We can leverage AI in its purest sense, so not a bit of glorified Excel sheets, but actually leverage all of that to learn. I think the health and care space is also rife for that. I think the only problem you have with bringing technology into the health and care space is understanding who the payer is. Unlike I think a lot of other industries where the money is a little bit more free flowing. When you're in health, which is let's call it the NHS or organized health, there's a lot more money there. There's a lot more. Someone is signing off checks, bigger checks. When you come into the social care space, which you've got a lot of smaller niche providers, even the largest care provider is nowhere near the amount of spend even one ICB spends. So when you got like care providers, they now need to worry about where that money is going to come from. What is that understanding? But also, I think what you also have is a lot of people that don't really understand the fundamentals of technology, trying to be shoehorned into using that. And by that, I mean, look, we all say, yeah, we understand technology. Let's bring computers in. Let's do this. Let's do that. But actually, what can we really do with AI? What can we really do with code? What can we really do with all that amazing quality, quantitative data that we have? And then how can we then push and challenge that? And I think we spoke about it before, and I think what we've said is we definitely need somebody, and we won't say any names, but we need somebody that will put their name out there and their reputation on the line in order to really push the envelope forward. And especially for the UK, I think right now, the way that our health and social care system is, we are so behind everyone else. And we keep talking about how we can reform it, how we can do this. The only way we're really going to evolve and anyone's going to really do anything groundbreaking is by leveraging technology. We have to leverage technology. So how do we leverage the technology in a way to move ourselves forward? And we have to look at what data we have, but also how do we take a real risk with that? But we need to own that. Stop sending it out to, partners and other companies that are global companies that are coming into the UK and doing it. We talk about, other politicians or other world leaders not far away from us to the west are talking about making his country great again. Why aren't we doing something like that? Why are we not emphasizing British companies? I don't care if the company's owned by somebody that is from somewhere else, but make British companies great. So we don't invest in our infrastructure. We don't invest in our British companies. It's easier for me to go and build a company abroad than it is for me and succeed than it would be for me to do that here. So why are we not incentivizing young entrepreneurs that are taking the risk? Because isn't the average age of an entrepreneur in the UK closer to 50? That's not a young entrepreneur. You're not taking a risk. You're not believing in young people to take that risk. So you're pushing them into a perspective where they just go, well, I'm not being taken serious and my opinions don't matter. I'll just go away, and then when I come back I might do something else.
Okay. So we'll go into the kind of whys and wherefores about the things are structured. But what I'm interested to hear about is how does Axela actually use technology in the health and care space? Well, give me some case studies, give me some examples of how you do that. Because to me, looking at from the outside in, I'm wondering, well, how do you make that more efficient? How do you make that sector more efficient when it's a very human to human experience for most people? So how does Axela do that?
I think that, but I think what I'll do, I'll chuck in a bit of the backstory. I think that will help, and then give you a bit of then the context. I think the human to human element of it, and I think it's probably the argument of technology. Everyone's basically trying to create the next wheel. Well, actually, all you need to do is find a way of simplifying somebody's journey, and you'll make a success. So Amazon hasn't changed the way that we in any change anything in any great hope. But what they have done is simplified. I want a product and I want it today. I want a whole lot of products and I want to know and I want a wide range of them in a simple place. They're doing what everyone else was doing, but what they really cleaned up on was we will deliver it to you as quick as possible. So it's purely around convenience. I want something and I want it now. I don't want to wait 7 days. I don't want to go pick it up from a warehouse in the middle of nowhere. I just want it to come to me. So they didn't create something new. They just simplified a journey. Your question, how do I use data in a care space, or how technology is used in a care space, probably comes from, so my story starts a little bit before that. So I've worked at, likes of Unilevers, I worked at Apple, and I worked at sort of LinkedIn. And after working at all of those companies, we set up a care agency, which our first care agency, Respect Care, back in 2006. I think our anniversary is in 3 days. Yeah, it's 18 years or 19 years in 3 days. No, it's 19 years. Yeah, 2006 we set it up. And I think after working for a lot of these companies and drinking what could only be classified as a corporate Kool-Aid for best part of 8, 9 years, I realized that I wanted to do something more and something a bit more meaningful, but using the experience and the know-how I had to go back into a space that was so old and archaic. And I use that because when I first came back, we were still using we still had pen and paper. We were still using, our filing system was an actual filing cabinet. And we would get, when someone was coming in for a job, if we hadn't, at that point, we were just about moving a lot of stuff online, but we were still taking paper applications. We were filling those information in. We were sending the DBS off to go to get checked via paper. We might be getting it back by an email, but it was still there. And what I also realized was, after sort of 6 or so years, we had so much patient information that we weren't analyzing. We didn't know half of the things that we do know now, but we weren't using that data. So I set about building our first system, which is where the overarching group came in. We created a system called Care ID. And what we wanted to do was create with Care ID was to have a single repository for all health and social care information of an individual. And we wanted to make sure that anyone that's providing care, all our files, all our care workers, every information we had, the system could identify it, flag it, and hold it in one place. We also wanted to understand what medication people were saying, and if that medication changed their mood, if they had a care visit, did that change their mood? We wanted to try and analyze as much as we can and then leverage on top of that. And then once we built the base system, we said, okay, what else can we find out? What else can we do? What else can we do to simplify somebody's life? And it was our overall kind of purpose there in the kind of the business is, how do we simplify people's life? That's kind of my guiding piece. So one of the things you ask, how can you simplify a human-to-human interaction? So one of the biggest problems people have when you're in a care setting, let's call it care homes or in home, a lot of individuals get UTIs, right? Because inevitably, they might be incontinent and they might not get clean. They might be wearing a pad. They might not get clean quick enough time, and that causes an infection. I was working with a company that was doing a bladder sensor, and I'm going to show you. So I don't have it. I should have shown you, but it's about the size of this, and it sits on on their hip. And what it does, it doesn't empty their bladder, but it allows you to understand what each person's full bladder is. So my bladder, I might drink, I could drink this whole liter bottle of water, and I'm fine for 3 hours after, and I don't need to urinate. You could drink a 200 millimeter a standard glass of water, and all of a sudden you need to go. And what it does is you're able to go on and set each person's level, when that person is full, when that person needs to be changed, and it allows you to reduce the amount of staff that you're using to do a simple task. So if someone's in a care home setting and they're wearing a pad or whatever, and they still on the mattress, you've got to get 2 people to come in and move it for moving and handling. So 2 people have got to help them out of the bed and into a chair. You've got to change the mattress, you've got to change the sheets, you've got to wipe it down, you've got to clean that person, you might have to wash them, you might have to get them changed, and then you've got to put them back into the bed. So that could be anything between about 45 minutes. From a speed perspective, it could be up to an hour. But if you've got a bladder sensor, and I can say, I've got 4 people I'm looking after, and I know that person is 80% full, that person's 10% full, that person's 30% full, and that person's 70%, I can go, all right, I'm going to go over there, I'm going to help that person. But instead of having to change the bed and do all of those sort of things, I might bring them a commode, or I might bring them to the toilet, or I might help them relieve themselves, and then go back. I don't need to change the bed sheets. I don't need to do all of that. I can quickly do them. Then I can go to the next person. I can go to the next. I can go to the next. But also, I realize that person, their bladder has been at 10% for the last hour. They haven't been drinking. Again, another reason why, because they forget. When you've got dementia and you've got certain health conditions, you forget to hydrate. That person hasn't hydrated. I can go then help that person to hydrate. So there are ways you can use small bits of technology to relieve the bigger problems, because that person getting a UTI is them then going into hospital. That's bed blocking. That's costing the NHS money. That's costing the care system money. If I can reduce that, I'm saving money for everyone else, which means the money can be spent somewhere else better. Because someone go an elderly person going to the hospital, it's what is that, 5 grand? Is it around? Yeah, it's about 5 grand and a bed. That's a bed that someone else couldn't be using, but you could have solved the problem by investing £30 into a small sensor and put it on somebody in their home or inside a care facility. So I think there
Right.
is that's where, I mean, I'm not trying to change it. What I'm saying is what we did was we would integrate all these systems into our portal. So when you were looking after somebody, you could just go, I want this app, that app, that. That's it. I've got a full picture and I can fully have a 360 of that person and understand how to support that person.
So you're using technology and data to provide consistent proactive care that then reduces the risk to the patient and also the cost to the overall system.
I think that's all way better than I said it. Yeah. Well, that's probably why you've got what you do what you do. But yeah, it was always to try and understand how we can reduce the overall cost, and the upfront cost of the small bits of kit is always cheaper. Now, the benefit, what we found was working with small individual suppliers of these technologies was always more cost effective than going to somebody bigger. So a small company created these bit. I mean, as I said, the bladder sensor was a small company. They were tiny. We worked with a company out of Korea who were a part of Samsung. But again, their kit was ridiculously cheap. You try and work with companies here or other bigger companies, big global companies, they throw big global prices behind a product. Does this cost £10 or does this cost £500? It's £10. But when you now start putting a £500, if you put a £10 tag on it, you go to the NHS, they're going to go, oh, and it's coming from a small company. Oh, now large global company out of California says it gives you the exact same price at a product at 10 times the price. Yeah, let's go with it. Let's test it. Let's bring a couple of those in. And I think that's the problem. We also don't champion the little person to really bring that forward, because it's a risk. No one wants to fight me in the comments on it, but no one wants to take the risk on a small company because inevitably no one wants to put their pension on the line for something they don't know. And that is the biggest problem. We do not support entrepreneurship here unless you are at a certain size and the risk comes off the individual that's picked you and goes back onto the actual company. And then the moment you do that, you then automatically reduce the ability, because I think the way that our system of trying to grow and build a business is incorporated just doesn't work. Because if you are trying to set up a company or set up a company and you're trying to raise, you can't really get much investment unless you've had a previous company. If you're starting afresh, you can't get investment until you've gone and got friends and family around. And most VCs who are, scumbags, won't touch you until you've raised. And I said that. I know I said that, and I'll back that up because I don't like any of them. And I have friends that a few of them are friends, but they are vampires. Yes, that's my soundbite. My soundbite is VCs are like vampires, because once you take their money, you can never stop taking their money until you become a golem of yourself, because you just keep constantly taking it because the benchmark just keeps growing and growing.
I've got some very good friends who work in venture capital and private equity, and it's a challenging space. They are driven. They have a legal requirement inside their investment portfolio to get returns as soon as possible, and the model is push, and get the ones that are going to fail quickly, and then the 1 in 10 chance they want to see a 10x return minimum. So
No, I agree,
that's
and
there's
I,
a
and I
lot of
agree
rules
that.
to that. So how do you get beyond that, right? Because that is it's the heart of that question about
But it's
how
getting to
you
that. My
create.
my question is, how do you get to that point? It's getting to that point with them. To get to a point where a VC will even have a conversation with you, you have to have had a friends and family round. And most VCs won't touch you unless you've raised 250K from friends and family. Now, how much of this country and at this point in time can go to their network and say, hey, I have a really great idea. Can I borrow some money? And you might go, yeah, but no one's going to give you 250. You might need to go to a whole lot of people. Unless you have 250,000 friends or 1,000 friends that are all willing to chip in a bit of money, it is going to be nigh on impossible to raise that. So you're going to have to go out and do everything on the sun and everything. And it just is hard because most founders spend most of their time trying to raise and less time trying to and a lesser amount of time building a product. It's something like a 78% of your time is on a raise and 20 to 30% of your time is on a product.
Absolutely. And then when you've done the raise and you're developing the business, actually a huge amount of your time is going to be looking after the shareholders and stakeholders in the business and writing reports for them. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying there. It's part of life for a founder.
Which is why I think we need to create real incubation periods where we're actually supporting founders and saying, okay, look, if you're about to found a business in the health and social care space, you get no business rate, you don't pay business rates for the first year, or you get a grant of X amount that you have to, if you are able to meet these targets, you don't pay it back. But if you do, you pay it back. I don't know if there's a grant or a loan or whatever it is, but just put things in that really helps put us back in a great space because we are being beaten from a health and social care. And I use that total term together. We are being beaten by a lot of other countries. I believe our system is what top 5 in Europe and maybe less than in top 20 in the world from a combined. So this is when now you start looking at the combined system of how we support people from a health perspective and how we support people from a social care perspective. We're not even in the top 10. From being the benchmark to now being so far behind that we couldn't even catch up if we tried with the number one country. That being
Yeah, I think we're ranked even lower than that, actually, in many respects. And actually, in terms of productivity, we are ranked, the UK is 11th in Europe in terms of productivity. Now, to me, that's kind of crazy. We were supposed to be one of the biggest some of the most powerful economies on the planet, and yet we're 11th in Europe at productivity. And it strikes me that one thing that Axela is doing is using technology in an industry which desperately needs better productivity. And if part of that productivity is prevention rather than cure, and that's what Axela's doing, then that is surely a big place for investment. I'm sure you would agree with that.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about, I mean, you've got very distinct views on that whole environment. And I mean, we've spoken before at length on certain aspects of that, and you know it's tough raising and it's tough building, and it's also fair to say that after 19 years, you know, it hasn't been an overnight success for Axela. You struggled in your early years, right? And it's commendable that you're still here after 19 years. I mean, that's that in itself. What was the journey like for Axela? Because you didn't start off as a technology-driven business. You started off as a healthcare business, developing that. So how did that come about? How did you manage to build that business, and how did you manage to wrap the technology into it?
So we started. I think the journey for the group and the way it's kind of come together is interesting. I think I said so. When we first set up the first company, we moved into. You know, my mother had just been made redundant, so which is key to the story. She'd just been made redundant from a company that she had worked for, I think, for about 5 or 10 years. She still does, but she works 7 days a week. She's working 18 hours a day. She's given everything she could, and this company just moved her to the side. And she's kind of, I think she's typical of a lot of people who are really, really good at what they do, but don't have the belief in themselves, because we aren't taught, I think, or weren't for a long while. I mean, if you're pre 1990, you weren't really taught to put your head above the pulpit. It's a rarity to have somebody. You're always just stay there, toe the line, don't go above your station. You can never go above that. So she always wasn't sure what she was going to do. And I said to her, look, why don't we try and build a care business? You know what you're doing. I'm pretty sure we can pull it together. And I remember drawing the first logo we used up until recently in an all bar one, or probably have to change that, but in a place in Notting Hill with a friend, and I literally sketched it on the back of a napkin and said, yeah, I think that's what we're going to go with. And we had a computer, the first machine that we could afford. We set the company up, I think think it was like a £500. We set it up within the bank, or even less than that. We had a computer that was donated to us by somebody that you could turn it on, but you couldn't turn it off. And if you turned it off, you had to wait 6 hours for it to fully boot itself back up again. So we pretty much left that on. I think that was left on for about 4 years non-stop. So that might have eaten away a lot of our initial electricity bills, and our kind of our global eco footprint was pretty low at that point. But we grew and we kind of stood steady. And her kind of guiding principle is profit and money should never be put above care. So she always wants to give the best we can. And we then just, everything we did was, and the way we work is, we build our relationships, and we always have. So when I told you about all these devices that we've been working, all these companies we've worked with, we found it a lot easier to take them along our journey, talk to them about what we're trying to achieve and why we're trying to achieve it, and get the devices from them to test and then to pass on at for free or as low as possible. Whereas when you try and go to a lot of the bigger players, or you've got to pay this price and you've got to pay that, and it's like, well, I'm trying to sell it. We're trying to give it to somebody that's elderly. They don't have that money. They don't have that. So you're hitting a brick wall. And we found it very, very hard that everyone that was trying to develop care, systems, processes, anything for the care space, was looking at it from a VC perspective or a management perspective is probably a better way. Great. There's, what's the next industry that's rife for innovation? What's the next industry that's going to, that we can 10x our business? Oh, it's care. Let's throw some stuff into care. Let's build this bit of thing, and we can either put it into fashion tech or we can shoehorn it into care. No one was going, okay, this is care. How do I build something from the ground up that people really needed and had fundamentally had a footing in trying to solve the smaller individual problems? And I think that's what's unique with us is everyone's trying to go from here, oh, let's bring it into care and grow. We're going, well, we know what's wrong. We know what we need. We know what other people in our sector need. We talk to all other providers that are in the sector. Let's build tech that solves our problem and then keep scaling that and scaling that and scaling that up. And I think that's what's been unique about us, because we are a care provider and we provide care in London and around London. We were able to go, okay, what can we build that solves our problem? Great. That solves our problem. Let's go to somebody else. What problems you have? This is what we have. How can we build this to solve your problem? Great. And that's all we did. We just went, can we build a relationship with you? This is what we have. How can we solve your problem? Okay, we're going to go off and learn what that could be. So we were told by somebody the bladder sensor, that wasn't us saying, okay, we need a bladder sensor. Someone said one of the biggest problems we have is we have a lot of our occupants get UTIs, and a lot of them don't hydrate enough, and we have to then change sheets, and we've got to spend a lot of money on changing sheets and staff, and we need to double down. We need to be able to do more work with less staff, but without reducing the level of staff. So we said, okay, give us some time. We're going to go off and find these things and work out what that was. We took a really, really loose brief and then built that into the bigger picture. And that's all we do. We say, what problems do you have, and how can we help solve that problem? And we will go out and find the tech or brief the tech, and because of, as I said, my background is working in technology, but I also have an industrial design degree. So I will brief and say, this is kind of what I want, and this is what I want it to do. Let's write a scope and go off and get somebody to do that.
Yeah. What I really like about that approach is it fits into that kind of lean methodology, that the Toyota principle of constant improvements. You're not trying to, I think what you said earlier on is like, you're not trying to invent the wheel or invent the motor car, I think you might have said, but what you're not trying to do is to do something that's revolutionary. You're doing something which is evolutionary of the entire care curve. You're hitting the bottlenecks. You're tackling the individual bottlenecks that are coming from the industry and from your experience, and using some of that data in order to improve that care profile. Because what it does, if you're proactive, you're making life better for the patient. You're making life a damn sight easier for the carer. You're reducing workload. You're increasing productivity. And that increasing productivity, reducing the workload, is the whole Toyota. That's how Toyota became the kings of manufacturing. Gradual improvements to the system. That's what you're doing. You're doing gradual improvements to the system. And I think that's a really nice approach to it, because it's an evolution as opposed to a revolution.
No, yeah, I completely agree. It's probably a better way than better way than I would have put it. But it's a small, constant improvements I think that work. We're not a big company. We don't have big budgets, so we can't try and we're not trying to. Is it the oil tanker analogy? You're not trying to completely turn it straight away. You have to change. You got to do gradual turns. And while we're doing those gradual turns, what we're also doing is trying to educate the industry, an industry that is so risk averse, that has an ingrained blame culture. Like it's just blame is just so ingrained in this space that by the gradual turns you're doing, you're able to educate people just a little bit more along the line and bring more along with you on that journey instead of kind of completely turn and go, right, we're going to go this way, or we think this is the best option. The gradual turn allows everyone to understand and go, oh, I see it. Oh, okay. Yep, everyone else is doing that. Maybe we can meet you halfway sort of scenario. And that kind of feel, and I know it's frustrating, but it's you have to educate because this even though the space is fully understands how technology can be used everywhere else, it's so ingrained from a risk perspective that no one wants to take that risk to use it unless they know that someone else, they have sort of a safety net below them in order to make sure they're okay. So I think that's kind of key is which kind of goes back to the point where I think we need that voice of somebody because that person has to be the safety net for everyone else to go really, because there are some amazing companies out of the UK trying to do some amazing things for the health and social care space and the health space, even just like the data side of the health space, but the safety net just isn't there.
Yeah. Do you then develop products, trial them in different countries, and then bring them back to larger marketplaces to deploy once you've got the case studies?
Yeah, so that's kind of a part of what we're doing from the innovation side of the business, which we set up. So we're currently building two really good bits of tech. We're trialing one of them. We're currently trialing in the Philippines because I think it's a really young market. And if you look at some of the markets that are some of the countries which we just spoke about a little while ago, but if you look at some of those countries that have overtaken us, they're all in Southeast Asia. The top three, I think, countries with the best healthcare systems are in Southeast Asia. This is one of those countries that is in that space that is so rife for technology. The benefit they have is they are mobile first, where we grew up with desktops and then moved on to mobile. They're mobile first, so you're able to create things a lot quicker. You're able to be a lot more in people's faces. You're able to engage. And from a cost perspective, a mobile is so much easier and so much more portable than a computer. So it allows you also to have a lot more data given back to you from the individual as opposed to a computer screen. So we're looking at right now. We're over there. We're building one of our kind of current principles is we want to simplify the care journey. We want to make sure that if you are receiving long-term healthcare, the worry shouldn't be I need this or I need that or how can I find this. So we've created a marketplace and we're calling it Connect, and we're creating a marketplace for individuals to go on and find the things they need. So one of the things you have, if you've never had care before, or your parent has never had care before, and all of a sudden, God forbid, they now need care, but you need to adapt a home, you need a bed, you need equipment, you need potentially they now got, God forbid, they have something like Parkinson's and they've got a little bit of a bit of a shake or a bit more movement. Where do you get a safety cup? Where do you get a walking stick? Where do you get all these equipments? And especially if you live places where it's not in abundance, where do you get all this stuff from? Is it free? Some of it's free, but you don't know what it is. So where do you go? So we want to create that. So if you need your home adapted, you go on, you find an approved list of people in your area that will come in and adopt a home. If you need a care worker, if you need a nurse, if you need anything that you need support into the home, you can go on a place and find it. Now, is that technology driven? Is it moving the needle forward? Somewhat it is, because what we're trying to do again is we're bridging that gap. We're allowing individuals to understand how you can use technology to solve an older problem. And then once you've now got that, what we have built, and it's one of our best bits of kit, is we built this amazing bit of kit, which is a point in time fall detection camera. And it is any camera that you have. If you've got your phone, if you have an iPad, you have your laptop, you just point it at a point in time. So you have family member, they're in the living room or whatever, you point it at that point in time, and the camera can detect a real fall as opposed to a fake fall, someone from sitting down, and can detect a distress signal. And so we use sort of 3 points reference. But it's amazing for individuals that are just falling. And what we do is we analyze that person's gait, because again, analyzing your gait, we can detect what the likelihood is of you're going to have a fall and what the likelihood of when that is going to happen as well. So we use that, and that gets churned through by a bunch of AI that goes, great, this is a likelihood, and gives you a falls score. But these are things that we're building. Now, we're not saying any of that is new, because detection cameras are out there, falls detection cameras are used in other spaces, but no one's using it in a care space. No one's understood that actually the massive benefit it has of an individual that's just had a fall and is on the floor for 6 or 7 hours, as opposed to somebody that's just had a fall and they're on the floor for 10 minutes, and someone calls, doesn't get hold of them, an ambulance comes round or a care worker comes round, and within an hour they're back up and in a chair and they're being seen by a medical professional, which would be a paramedic. So, yeah.
I find what's really interesting as I speak to you more and more is I asked earlier on about what Axela does, and you said, technology-driven company in health and care space. And then I asked you, give me some case studies about how you've applied that, and you started by giving one, and then you kind of went into another one. And actually what I'm picking up as we go through the conversation is there's actually loads of different use cases that you are in technology to, this Kaizen principle, making things, gradual, or rather you can do rapid improvements if you wanted to with small changes. That what you've described to me isn't necessarily like the Palantir eye in the sky kind of thing of trying to get all the data and trying to fix everything all at once. It's actually applied technology to a specific set of problems, and it's about releasing those bottlenecks. And did that kind of philosophy come about because of your industrial product and knowledge of that, or was it through working with, because you mentioned earlier you worked LinkedIn, Apple, some gorillas there, right? Some giants in the room. Where did that come from? Where did that need to do this, or how you apply your mind and your thinking to what is quite a traditional industry?
I think I'm not sure how to say that. I think what I learned from working for those giants was I met some amazing individuals working there that were just solving problems and using their brain to solve a problem that they believed in and solve a problem that they felt was important to them. And I think that's the only difference, is shifting my focus from working over there to over here. I know this is my focus because at some point I'm going to get old. My mother's going to get old. My family will get old. And how I feel like we all expect and wait for somebody else to solve a problem for us, when actually I have the understanding and the knowledge. So why not try and fix that problem myself? Why not try and at least even kickstart that snowball effect, initially moving that down the line? And what I've been really lucky to do is to travel and see how care is being delivered in other countries. So, I've traveled to Japan with an amazing company when I worked with them called Cradle. They were having really advanced conversations with a company called Sompo, who are a massive insurance company and care company in Japan. And it was a country where, and that's where kind of a lot of my understanding came from, even though I wasn't there for a huge amount of time. But a country where when you think technology, you just think all of it. You mean Super Nintendo, Atari, everything. When you think technology, you think that is going to be the epitome of an environment. What I found was technology is used to enhance the human interaction or enhance the situation, but not to replace if it doesn't need to. So technology is only ever used. What I loved was one of the restaurants I went into, you went into the restaurant and there was a vending machine, like a standard, I want this, this, and this, right? So pictures, a little bit like when you go to, I don't know, McDonald's. I think McDonald's have a screen, but assume that. So you say, I want this, this, and this, right? It gives you a ticket. You pay for your food, that interaction's done. You take that ticket, you sit down at the counter for a full proper meal, and you give that ticket to the chef. No waitress, nothing else. You give it to the chef. The chef then takes the ticket, looks at it, and then cooks your food, whatever that might be. Now you might go, well, how does that enhance the interaction? So you're not having to worry about who's splitting the bill, how you're splitting the bill. You're not having to worry about, oh, can I have this? Can I maybe have that? The food isn't cooked this. You're removing all of the interaction from a waitress perspective, which means you can have a smaller environment because inevitably space is a premium in Japan. So you can run a restaurant out of a much smaller space. Individuals come in, they know exactly what they're going to get and nothing more. So they order their food, you get it. So you reduce the amount of time someone's sitting on the seat for, because also you can see how many other people are now waiting. So you're socially aware of that. You and I both know exactly what you're getting. There's no kind of if or buts or whatever that might be. But also from a paying perspective, that whole kind of interaction of, oh, you got to pay, split the bill, it becomes a bit awkward at the end. Oh, service charges added. That's all done. You sit down, you get your food, you leave, you're done. And I thought that was actually quite unique, that just that one interaction sped up the process by 30 to 40% and reduced the amount of time people were inside the restaurant, which created a massive efficiency. Again, when we went into one of the care homes with Sompo, what they had was actually they had books. I mean, they had several. Some of them were using computers, some were using tablets. But I went into one home and they were still using a book because they said because we are taught to write because their writing is actually super neat and tidy as a fundamental. I think as a part of the culture. When we looked at the book, he was like, from a writing perspective, our staff can write quicker into a book than they can into a phone or into a tablet. So we've kept the book because that's the most efficient way to deliver it, to do this. Because when they start writing on tablets, it gets a little bit messy and the tablet just isn't as quick enough as they can write and as efficient. So it's always using technology where we think it enhances that interaction. And I think that principle drives us now. Technology is only ever used where I think we can enhance the interaction. And we want to do this, but it's so much easier to do this over time than to try and get here. Because we're not ready for this. We're ready for this. We're okay. We're going to take steps.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't. If you meet somebody today, you go on a date today. You don't say to them at the end of the date, so we are going to get married in 6 months, or we're going to get married in 2 years, and we're going to have children in 3 years. You say, let's go on another date. Let's do another date. And over time, you start to grow and you start to grow that trust. You start to build that relationship, and then you take the next step, and then you do that. So why do we try and do this straight away when everything else in our life teaches us to do things like this? So we can move this a lot quicker, but we've got to do this.
Yeah. So actually, when it comes down to product as well, evolution versus revolution in many respects. Kaizen, gradual change, people build into that. And that there's a kind of whole philosophy to that, and you've obviously studied it or developed it, and that's driven part of the success and the ethos and philosophy of Axela. Fascinating. Okay, right. Quick fire round, because I think you and I could probably talk for hours. And in fact, we have done already in other conversations. So, quick fire round for you. If you're going to start a business tomorrow, what would be the top 3 tips that you would tell yourself?
Top 3 tips I tell myself is make sure you have a support network around you or an amazing co-founder. That is fundamental because it is very lonely at the top and you need somebody that you can vibe off. Make sure you have an outlet. So as much as you might be hyper-focused, you have to have something that just takes your brain away temporarily to help you to relax. And then third, make sure you fundamentally believe in what you're trying to build. If you had a gun to your head, you could argue why what you're trying to build is the best thing without any wavering thought.
Okay, great response. Very original. Like that. The one thing you would have done different in starting and running a business?
Set it up abroad. I wouldn't have set it up in the UK. I think we went really early in trying to set up the business. And I think we were so far ahead of our time when we first set it up that a lot of people just weren't ready for what we were trying to do. And it meant that we were banging our heads. Like we had the guy that built our initial machine learning engine was this genius out of Edinburgh University his thesis was on how was neural engines and how children learn. And he was building us our AI based on that. But when we were telling everyone we were building AI, what most people were still doing was a glorified Excel sheet. So when we were trying to explain we have this amazing neural engine, people were like, but have you though? But really have you? Because if IBM, and we actually had someone say, if IBM have spent of 100 developers spending the last 3 years trying to build a neural engine, how do you think you can do it in 6 months? And I went, because the guy that's working for IBM for at $5,000 a day is building ours for free today. The same guy, $5,000 a day, he was building ours. So he was working there and then doing ours in the evening and saying, I'm basically giving you guys what you need because you've been very clear on your instructions. They're trying to build something here and I'm charging them 10 grand a day and you guys are going to get it for free. And I
Wow.
even said that to
Okay.
somebody and they're like, oh, how did you get him? And I'm not going to tell you my secret sauce. You got to go do that yourself.
Brilliant. Okay. All right. Next quick fire question is going to be book that's inspired you. Tell me the book that's inspired you.
A book that's inspired me. Oh, we can't talk about religion. Okay. I'm going to say The Alchemist. And the reason why I'm going to say The Alchemist over a self-help book or actually no, it's going to be two. Before I say, oh, it's going to be, I read the novel by this person or this author. I think everyone is on their own journey, right? And I think what a lot of people do is you look at somebody else and you try and copy their blueprint. And someone said to me a long while ago, the part of the blueprint you see isn't the part where you are. So you might see somebody that's successful and you go, right, I want to copy them and be as successful as them. But what you don't see is all the things that have got them to that point. Now, if you're trying to jump into here, you haven't got any of these fundamentals in place. So when things go wrong, you're not going to drop back a step. You're going to go all the way back to the beginning. And that's when you're going to get your depression is going to set in. That's when your doubt and all those things. So you have to kind of get to a point and go, okay, I'm going to use what this person's done as a tip. I'm going to use this as a bit. I'm going to take this. I'm going to take this. You got to take things from everywhere. But the foundation has to be around you understanding what your purpose is and what is your guiding principle. And I think that book really helped me. And the other one was A Subtle Art of Not Giving a S, which was a very strange book that was given to me by my wife. I think she thought it was quite funny giving it to me. But I read that book, and for so long, I was always conscious of making sure that what I was doing was accepted by everybody else. I was making sure everyone was being brought on a journey. Everyone was part of it. Everyone felt like they had a voice around the table. And actually what that book taught me is believe in yourself and actually what you believe in is fundamental. You can always persuade other people to believe in that, but don't doubt who you are and don't change who you are for other people because the reason why I give you an example, before the pandemic, we sat down as a board and I said I had two really new ways of moving the business into. So we look after elderly people, we've got technology. What I wanted to do was control that end-to-end journey of someone's touch point with health, but also the part when they're not touching with us. How do we look support the family and everybody else? We made sure everyone was mental health trained. We made sure everyone could it was bereavement trained. And I said, well, why don't we open a funeral home, because inevitably we kind of get to that point, we pass everyone off, but we're not supporting the family in that last stage. And actually, we talk about we want to help people, we want to support people. Why not? And then I remember sitting down with somebody and saying, actually, funeral homes, a little bit like care agencies, are quite independent. So they're normally a family run or an independent, and they normally own one, push two. There's only about 3 or 4 big funeral home groups, Co-op and a few others. And I sat down and I pitched it, and I pitched it to the board, and they said, oh, we're not sure, it's a bit morbid. And I said, okay, fine, it's okay. And I didn't doubt myself, but I agreed with everyone else at that point. And then I think 3 months later, a pandemic hit, and I sat down and went, we really should have gone into funeral homes. And I'm not saying I'm profiting off something that happened, but it was an opportunity that I saw before it happened. And I gave that example because I could give a couple of others, but some are internal. Those are instances that have happened. And what I then realized was actually, I have to believe in myself. I have to make those decisions. And that is not just in my business. It's the same way with my children. If I believe that my children should learn a language, should learn an instrument, and should be able to swim. I know no one really swims. We are one of the only countries, and I'm pretty sure we are the only country in Europe where we only speak one language. We are one of the only countries in the world that we only speak one language. I think it's Australia and definitely America. Australia and America, and maybe one other, right? So only a handful of them. So they have to learn that. A music instrument opens their brains. It allows them to have an outlet. Swimming is just a really great. It's probably one of the best bits of exercise you can actually do. No matter how big or small you are, swimming is actually the best exercise. It's known, right?
Yeah.
So those three for me are fundamental. And everyone says, "Oh, well, do you have to?" No, those are my no. Those are my non-negotiables. Because as a parent, you have to say, these are what my fundamental guiding principles are that I'm going to pass on to my children. Because if you can stick to those three completely different skills and bring them together and they be your thing, you're always going to have an exercise. You're going to learn a language, which means you're going to have to understand other people's views and other world things. But also, one language means you're going to travel, and traveling always opens you up to new opportunities and seeing other things. So you're not going to be stuck there. It also gives you confidence to speak to other people. And what was it? Swimming, again, exercise, swimming, and musical. I think a musical instrument is just one that it's a creative outlet, but also it opens different parts of your brain. So instead of sitting there and just vegging out and staring at a computer screen, go write some music, go sing, go enjoy sound.
Yeah, I'm going to challenge you on something there, and that is the music thing. Because from what you were just saying, what was going through my mind was what you've done is you've highlighted three different activities, and those three different activities that what I got from it was literally mind, body, and soul. And I think the music thing is
Yeah,
not so much a mind thing; it's a soul thing. I think it's music is the food of the soul, right? So some people argue food is, but for me, it's that thing that can elevate. It's that thing in your mind when long-term memories. Music is the things that triggers them, but it's what makes us feel good. So actually, the three things that you've identified, speaking a different language opens up the world, makes you see other things, allows you to engage and to have different perspectives in life as well. Plus, it keeps your mind active. Music, great for the soul, and then swimming, great for the body. So it's mind, body, and soul. So
yeah.
I think that's great. And you know what I find really great in that is none of the things that you said to pass on to your children were anything to do with money or business. It was about
No,
personal development. And the other thing that I'm going to challenge you on is, if that's okay, which is the Alchemist. I think that's one of the biggest self-help books I've ever read.
you said yeah. No, it's weird. So I've given the Alchemist to about three people that work underneath me, and I gave it to one of my closest friends when he'd just left a job that he hated and was awful for him, and he was going away. No, where was he going? He was going somewhere. I want to say Turkey, and I gave him a copy of The Alchemist and said, "Look, just you're away for a week. Just read this book because when I first read it, I think I didn't really understand it, and I read it again, and it's helped because it changed just my focus and my understanding of things. Look, it's not, there are better self help books out there, Good Chimp, Bad Chimp, all these really great books. I think from all these, what you need to do is take the snippets from it yourself. But no, I genuinely love The Alchemist and I love his books. But also, I'm going to show you another book, this book, because I'm massively right now into, gut health, because I think your gut health is, I think we forget how important the gut is to our overall machine, and let's call the body a machine. But we forget how important the gut is to the overall machine. Everyone tries to, lose weight this way and that way. You worry what all these problems are, and it always boils down to what you put in and how you look at it. So right now, that's something I'm trying to understand and actually take things out of that as well and see how we can go. I think any book you read, and I know we never really touch on religion, but I grew up, Catholic and reading the Bible, and there's a parable. I don't fully remember it because it's been a couple of years, but the parable of I'm going to forget what the parable is. The seeds. It's told in very different ways, but the seeds that get sown on ground, the seeds that get sown in dirt, some are thrown and some are thing, and it's about how you take that information and how you're nourished by that information. So if all you do is you're sowing, if you're put in the right place and you read all the books under the sun, and you don't actually disseminate those books and that information for yourself, you need the books in order for you to know what you're doing. But you can give somebody just a snippet of that and go, take this, go learn. And they can take that and go and take it in completely different ways, because what they're trying to do is use that as an understanding, as a leverage to get to the next step. Whereas other people can't, because they don't have, and I go back to the foundational principles, they constantly need to be told, right, you're here, but what do I do next? I've done this. what's next? I'm here, I'm stuck. Whereas somebody that's taught to understand how the fundamentals come together will always try and find a solution to the problem that they have at that point in time, and they will use the things they've learned, but they don't need that kind of step by step.
Yeah, there's a thing in NLP, the most famous thing I think in NLP, when they say that the map is not the territory, and you make your own ordnance survey, if you like, of what the space around you and your experiences, and that's what shapes your thinking, and that's some of what you're talking about there. And that parable that you mentioned about casting seeds on different types of ground, and then how some seeds flourish and some seeds don't, and that kind of thing is completely relevant. And that's I think our conversation today has not only been about technology and its place in care, but it's been a bit of a profound philosophy from you, and me just listening to some great words, Nicholas. I've got to say, every time we speak, we end up speaking for far too long, but it's always an absolute pleasure. Nicholas, I'm going to wrap up the interview by saying I find every time I speak to you, I find it really inspiring. I love what you're doing with Axela. I think it's brilliant because it's real world, and it's human design and technology being made to make those incremental changes that improve people's lives, and not trying to reinvent the wheel, but kind of creating your own wheels, if you like. So, Nicholas, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today, and no doubt we'll be speaking more in the future and shooting the breeze a lot longer. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for that, Matt. It's been fun.
Thanks, Nicholas. Bye-bye.